Hello, I'm Brian Lucareli, Director of our Private Client Services Group and co-chair of our Family Offices team at Foley and Lardner. And today I'm here with Lindsey Birch, an associate and member of our Intellectual Property Practice Group. Welcome, Lindsey.
Thank you.
And today we're going to be discussing art ownership. But before we get started, Lindsey, would you mind just sharing a little bit of your professional background with our audience, and then we'll jump right into it?
Yeah, of course. So I am an intellectual property attorney here in Milwaukee, but before that, I got my master's in art history and my bachelor's in art history and fine arts. And I have held positions in museums, done provenance research, etc. So I have managed to keep a part of my practice still doing and touching art law on a day-to-day basis.
Well, we clearly have the right expert with us here today. So why don't we jump right into it if you're ready?
Yeah, of course.
And so, from an intellectual property perspective, what are the things to consider when creating or commissioning art?
Yeah, so to bifurcate that question, when you're creating or commissioning art, the biggest question is who owns what? So, from a creator's perspective, a copyright exists from the moment of creation, from pen hitting paper, and it is granted to the author unless there's some sort of agreement that says otherwise. And this is a very long lasting set of rights. It's the life of the author plus 70 years.
Well,
And this area of law isn't always the easiest to navigate. For example, different parties might own rights in different things. So if you look at just a song, someone might own the rights in the recording, the lyrics, the composition, and the cover art for the CD or vinyl that it's printed on. So specialists can help navigate the ins and outs of this type of practice and making sure that your rights are protected from the get-go before any issues arise. And then from a commissioner's perspective, it's the same type of thing. You'll likely own the right to the physical work that is created. So, for example, if you manage to get Elizabeth Peyton, who was the artist that did the really prolific series of portraits for Kurt Cobain in the 90s, to do an intimate family portrait, it's best to have an agreement in place with the artist on what rights are retained by you versus her and what can be done in the future. So, for example, are you okay with her creating a series that you don't own all the copies to and that ending up in the MoMA? So it's just better to plan those types of things from the beginning.
got it. So based on your explanation, ownership seems to be at the heart of many of the issues surrounding the creation of new work. And is the same true for works of art that are now, let's say, in the public domain or antiquities?
Yes, absolutely, but for a completely different reason. So for older collections, copyright law is likely no longer at issue. But older collections have another issue, especially if they've changed hands several times, because chain of title and provenance becomes vastly important as it impacts the work's value, marketability, and even your ability to own a work from a civil and criminal perspective.
So based on that, when do title issues come into play then?
All the time and in very different ways. So the most obvious are when you're acquiring a new work, and then also when you're selling a new work. But one of the more sneakier things that comes in is often related to insurance coverage. So when you're trying to loan a piece in your collection to a gallery, sometimes there can be disputes over the insured value of that collection based on its provenance. And the same thing is just insurance coverage for your own personal collection when at home or wherever it is. There can be issues surrounding when valuations occur or stated amount versus agreed values in how the valuations occurred that can be greatly impacted based on the provenance of a piece. And then the government often gets involved whenever certain levels of transfers of assets occur, but the same thing is true in the art space, particularly related to antiquities.
Okay.
And in these types of cases, we, for example, worked with the DHS to help repatriate artifacts where a provenance has come up as potentially concerning and that would otherwise make an artwork or artifact unsaleable due to these issues. And we help clients deal with the implications of that from a tax standpoint as well.
So, is it possible to protect oneself against future or potential future issues surrounding title?
Yes, in the sense that it's mitigating risk, if that makes sense. So there's certain steps collectors can take to protect their investments, and the earlier you loop in a specialist, especially if you know some of the things to look for when you're acquiring fine art or artifacts, such as if there's specific gaps in title or if there's certain concerning names or parties associated with the artifact. Sometimes these can come up if they've passed through or come from certain countries. And then if the artifact or artwork itself requires a higher level of scrutiny. So, for example, in the US, Native American archaeological artifacts and artwork have some specific regulations surrounding them as well. So we can help navigate those issues and look through flags that might come up. And then the other thing that we do is help you build title protection into the purchase documents themselves. But the key is that due diligence and documentation often avoids these types of headaches later on, and they can navigate an acquisition, which then can help you in the future for insurance valuations, tax implications, loaning the work, or even in the future, coordinating the best way to sell, donate, or plan how your collection will be passed after you pass in terms of legacy planning as well.
Well, I have to tell you, this was certainly a very interesting topic, and I want to thank you for your professional insight today. And I want to thank all of you for watching our presentation. For more information, please visit us at Foley.com under Family Offices. Thank you.